Hi all. I am Shetul Mistry. Today we're gonna be discussing on topic test planning. So this particular topic or this particular feature of the Tosca was introduced from 11.0 version and it is followed in its subsequent versions or the releases which are being coming. So what we understand from the test planning. So in order to understand the test planning, as we are pretty much aware, like as a testing being the core for any of the product to be delivered as a successful quality product. So without planning, what needs to be tested? Because your product could have an altitude of a lot of features. So a proper planning for what to be tested, what not to be tested, what would be the entry point for the testing, what would be the exit criteria for the testing. All this needs to be discussed and it to be incorporated in a document which is known as a test plan. So basically, it is the first step to any of the project. And to elaborate more on the topic of test planning, it is an proactive activity which needs to be done throughout the project. And usually, we need to set up this kind of activity, like what we going to achieve by this testing, who going to do that, what are the different types of the task, how we are going to perform this task, are there any strategies in the place for which what we gonna be testing for it, or any definite timelines or the time frames which are been allocated to accomplish the uh, defined task for testing a particular requirement or a functionality. So all these things needs to be identified, scope scope it out, and needs to be incorporated in a test plan. So in Tosca, we have some operings for whatever the points which I have mentioned in the test planning activities. So first, to start in test planning section, the first point comes, or what we need to discuss is of for the time frame. What should be the time frame, or like what would be the timelines in which we would be testing any particular feature or any of the function of any application or a system or a cluster. So for that in Tosca, so in order to demonstrate, let's just go back to our Tosca. So here, as you can see, the tab test planning is been introduced in Tosca. Now here, as we discussed, like the first point, in order to carry out or to design or to construct a test plan, first we need to scope the timelines or the time frames for a particular requirement to be tested or any functionality to be tested. So the first step to do that thing in Tosca, we need to create a session. So as you can see in your screen, there is one tab called create session. So once you click on this tab, a test planning session would be created. So total there are three methods to create a session. One is been displayed here. By clicking on it, you can create. The another method is you right click on the test planning, and by this you can create the test planning session. And the another method is you go here, you click on create object, and you can from here also you can create the test planning session. So what we will do, we'll right click on the test planning and we'll click on create a test planning session. In order to understand what we are particularly working here, so here we gonna be designing one test planning session for one login functionality. So in order to understand what we are doing, let's just rename it test plan for demo web shop, let's say. Here in the test planning section, name it to, let's say, release one. Test the login functionality of application. I'm keeping it simple in order to understand this as a pretty much concept. So as you can see on your screen, once we created the test planning session, you you can see a number of the tabs which are visible on your UI. So what are these tabs? Let's discuss in detail and get an overview out of it. So here talking about the session owner. So this is the person who would be driving the whole activity of the test planning throughout your project cycle. So this session owner can be the admin, or he can be the test architect, or automation specialist, or any of the person who is been engaged in your project, or any, let's say, analyst or a IT person. So all these people are there in the session owner. So like now talking about, if you want to assign, if you want to assign your let's say the task you need to assign to any of the other user, then what we can do, with the help of the user management, we can create another user and we can assign it. So we'll see how that thing we can achieve in the later proceedings. But by default, the user who has been logged in the workspace would be assigned as the the session owner here, and the rest, if you want to assign it, that can be managed with the help of the user management. Now talking about the session start and the session end. So let's say you are working on some agile project, or let's as we have mentioned here, like we are working on the release one, the upcoming release is to test the login functionality of an application. So you need to decide the timelines and the time frames for that particular our release one, or let's say any of the releases of your product. So for that, the defining of the time frames has been taken care here. Let's say your start uh, session start date is today itself, time is also this, and you would be ending, let's say, after 2 weeks. So these are your timelines for your particular release one. And now then, talking about the participants or the session participants who would be the part of it. So this under this session participants, everyone who are involved in your task, in the project, let's say, who are the part of your Tosca commander, or who the people who gonna be doing the automation, or any defect analysis has been done, or the regression has been carried out. So each and everyone who are been involved in your project would be the part of this session participants. And so this can be added, in order to add this session participant, as you can see here, there's one button called add. So from here you can add the test planning user, can create the users here. Now here, let's say, for example, any user apart from your project, let's say, as I mentioned, like the IT admin person is there and who is required to open some firewalls for setting up, let's say, the server or any of the license server, let's say, for example, or any or who has been required in order to set up the Tosca infra. So whoever is contributing to your project, who is not a part of the Tosca environment, but he or she is additionally needed in order to set up your Tosca environment, that can also be added here. Um, so yes, what we were discussing about of adding the session participants. So as I have mentioned, like by default, who is the owner of the workspace would be the session owner here. But let's say, for example, you want to assign this task and the session participants accordingly, then how you can do that thing? So that can be achieved with the help of the user management. So as you can see here, so you need to go at your project root level, and there in the user management, under the admins, you can create the user. So here, for the sake of simplicity, I have already created. So I've created two users. One is automation specialist and one is test architect. Let's say, so how you need to create, you right click on the admins, name it, let's say IT admin, as I mentioned now. So let's say this has been created. And now you jump back to the test plan. So as you can see, we have already created and we need to assign the name or whatever. So as you can see, we have given the three names at the user management. One was test architect, one was the automation specialist, and just now we created the IT admin. So so here in the session participants, there is one feature. Um, if we start writing the name, let's say automation. So once I type the A from the drop down, whatever the users you defined at the user management, that would be populated here. So you can select from there itself, test architect, let's say IT admin. So our list of session participants has been created. Now, once this is done, you can create the session description. So this is the session description. So what is the purpose of this session description? So here we will be jotting down the points which we already discussed in this what would be the contents of a test plan. So here we would be discussing about the scoping of our test requirements or the testing requirements. For in our particular case, we are actually testing the logging functionality of an application. So we would be discussing or we would be describing here what would be the scope, what would be the in-scope testing requirement, what would be the out-scope, what we not gonna be testing, any prerequisite or any assumptions covering what should be available in order to test that particular requirement. All this details we need to mention here. So for the sake of simplicity, um, I have already jotted down. Just a minute. So let's say yes, this is, so this I have already, will remove this attachment. Yes. So here in session description, I have already created for the sake of simplicity, like whatever just now we discussed, I have jotted down like the scope of this release would be to test the login functionality of an application. Second point is we are not going to test the performance of a login page. All the requested test data and the environment access must be available. So all in these things, you can provide the session description. We can also do the formatting here. You can provide the bullet points. If anything you need to do it in a tabular form, then you can create a table here. So anything which has been as per your requirement, you can do it here. Yeah. Um, let's say any of the diagrams or any of the architecture diagrams are there, or any of the logical diagrams are there which needs to be incorporated here, you can attach it here. So let's say I have a screenshot of a login page, I can attach it here just in order to have that awareness, okay, what I need to test in this particular release one. So yeah, in this way you can attach all your artifacts which can support your session description, or which can make your session description more robust, more understandable, and more providing much more visibility to it. So yes, this was about the session description. Now talking about the session attachments. So here, let's say there are some testing artifacts which are there in some document form, or in some Excel form, or in a PDF, or something which is there, which has been would be needed, or which would be required in order to test your login functionality. So all these attachments, necessary testing artifacts, you can attach it here in order to have a smooth transition. So you can browse it here. Let's say test artifacts for demo web shop. So you can attach it here, and you can choose a file type like embedded, linked, or a link manage. In this way, the artifacts would be attached here, and it can be opened for your further reference. So this was all about the session attachment. Also, one more point, like you can also attach the if some requirement is been created, then or let's say a execution of a particular requirement is been done, then that artifacts can also be attached here just for the reference. So in order to have a smooth transition, or having a linkage what with the uh, Tosca artifacts, like where the actual testing of the login functionality has been reached, and if you want to track, or if you want to have a traceability, you can keep that thing. Now talking about the discussion, or talking about what would be the next, then we need we can list out the task or the activities which we are going to perform during our release. So how you can assign the task to it. So you click on the session participant, let's say automation specialist, and here you right click, and as you can see, the create the test planning task. So here you can write like, for automation specialist, test the login functionality for demo web shop application. Something like this, you can provide the name to it, to your task, and what would be the goals and the details of your task, like what are the what would be the URL for it, what would be the username and password, what would be the test data, anything if it is available in a form of a dummy test data or something. All these things you can define here for that particular task in order to make it accomplished task at the end of the day. So this was about assigning the task. Now let's say the time spent, like now whatever the time spent by the user, or the estimated time, like you can provide in the like this test spent section. And the so here, talking about this test session, let's say this particular um, task would be taking, let's say, 4 hours. So we assigned the 4 hours here. Now as you can see, like the important thing is that whatever the time which has been allocated to each and every individual session participants would be the cumulative summation of all in the task duration field at the test planning level. So what I'm trying to say is, like here I have assigned the 4 hours. Now let's say here for IT admin also we are creating one task, naming it to open firewall for license server. And for test architect, to set up the infra for Tosca rollout, let's say. So he needs to set up some infra in order to have that Tosca environment created. Now here we are assigning some task. Sorry, we are assigning the time spent. So let's say here 10 hours, for example. IT admin, we are assigning, let's say, 2 hours. So total it is 4 plus 10 plus 2. So it makes to a 16. So here, when you go to the release, you can see the task duration is total 16, which is the cumulative summation of all the task duration at the individual session participant list, which makes the task duration as a cumulative summation for all this time duration or the estimated time which we have provided. Now here, talking about the status, let's say the once the task has been allocated to each of these individuals, and then uh, this status, let's say the login functionality has been changed to completed, then as you can see, like once until all the status has been changed to complete, the main status won't be changed into the complete, like it will stay in progress. Like if I select here in progress, it will be still in progress. If I make this as complete, and as you can see, the subsequent progress bar is also getting increased here, like 67% is completed, 33 is still remaining. Now once I complete this one, as you can see, the progress bar is it's changed to 100% with the green color, and the status is also now changed to the complete at the test planning session level. And this was all about the like the overall test planning, how you can use it, how you can create the session owners, how you can like assign the task to it, a session description which has been given, artifacts you can attach, the task has been monitored with the time spent, with the status, and who are the assignees for it. So in this way you can track and maintain, and you can do easy connectivity with your testing artifacts. So this was all about the test planning. Thank you.